veteran, an advocate, and an entrepreneur. I firstly also want to thank you for your service. That's definitely something really honorable, and grateful that we have a veteran here that has served their country. And MaCherie is going to talk to us about hope through social and political progress. And I am timing because we're a little bit sensitive on time because we're behind, but
I'm going to go over. I'm just letting you know now. Settle in.
Take up space.
That's right. That's right. In October of 1998, a week shy of my 15th birthday, the country was shocked by the savage and brutal murder of Matthew Shepard, a young person who was living an authentic life as a gay man in America. What those two men did to Matthew struck a chord of fear in people like me, who were hiding their existence. I remember reading this story as a sophomore in high school and feeling emotions like anger and fear and sadness. But I also felt hope. Hope that maybe this brutal and merciless hate crime would inspire change for our nation. Several weeks later, I was traveling with my basketball team for an out-of-town tournament. My roommate and I were alone, and she was asking me, "Are you a lesbian? Come on, tell me you're gay." "It's okay, pretty much everyone knows anyway." After some reluctance, I gave in and admitted what I knew to be true. It was my first time saying these words out loud, that I was a lesbian. She then called one person, and the next thing I know, our entire team was in the room. Everyone staring at me, waiting for the same news. Against my better 15-year-old judgment, I said again that I was a lesbian. And squeals of delight erupted at the juicy gossip they now had. I don't remember much about the rest of the weekend, but I do remember going back to school on Monday. Now, I lived in Texas at the time, and I went to high school in a small town between Dallas and Fort Worth. And in the 90s, it didn't really matter where you lived. Being gay in America was really hard. But in Texas, yeah, it was tough. By the time I returned to school on Monday, everyone knew, even the principal. Despite being an athlete, relatively popular, or at least known, I was subject to ridicule and teasing, and to a degree, being isolated from my peers. My senior year, I was even picked on by my varsity basketball coach, who didn't like that I was gay. She even made me go to church periodically, hoping that I would see the light. But also, during my senior year, another kid came out. He was a theater kid and bisexual and very outgoing. Everyone loved him. And I remember feeling a twinge of jealousy over how easily he was accepted. But I quickly checked myself. Good for him, and good for every single person around him who seemed so carefree and accepting of his rather flamboyant existence. Just 2 short years had gone by, and already I was seeing change and experiencing the first real twinges of hope for a different future. I joined the Air Force immediately after high school. It was January of 2002, and the policy of don't ask, don't tell was in effect. Seemed simple enough to me. Don't ask me if I'm gay, I won't tell you, right? Wrong. I remember having a somewhat hyper-masculine appearance, much like right now, and I was standing in front of my recruiter, and he handed me a bright yellow piece of paper to sign. It illuminated that not only could people not ask, and I couldn't tell, but I also couldn't engage in any homosexual behavior or gather in places homosexuals were known to congregate, and I couldn't have a relationship. I signed this paper because my desire for a different and better future was greater than my desire to operate as an out lesbian. Now, I did have a living girlfriend at the time, and we were madly in love, or as in love as 18-year-olds know how to be. We couldn't get married because it was illegal in 2002. So we got matching tattoos and did a commitment ceremony, and off I went to boot camp. Now, in 2004, I was investigated for being gay. I got called into my first sergeant's office time and time again, asking why I was at certain establishments or speaking with certain women at places like the mall. Knowing I was being followed and afraid of a dishonorable discharge, I temporarily separated from service. But I couldn't stay away, so I asked my recruiter to send me to a different unit with a different job in a totally different location. I ended up in a squadron called Red Horse, the Air Force's combat engineers. and I would become an operator specializing in heavy construction and heavy repair. Now, side note, I was the only woman in my job in the entire Air Force for several years. And in 2007, I was the only woman in Iraq with my job.
Wow.
The people that I served with in Red Horse didn't care that I was gay. They cared about whether or not I pulled my weight because our work was brutally intensive. The guys became like brothers and uncles, most of them anyway. And I knew that I could be myself. The policy around don't ask, don't tell hadn't changed, but in just a few short years, I'd experienced progress where I shouldn't have because my environment changed. And that progress fed into the hope that things would be okay after all. I still had to be careful, but there was a world where I could do what I loved and be who I was, my true and authentic self. In 2011, something incredible happened. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was officially repealed, and we could no longer be dishonorably discharged for being ourselves. I had a different partner at the time who was active duty, and it meant the world to be able to attend events like Christmas parties and re-enlistment ceremonies without the fear of being persecuted. The policy change permanently altered the landscape for hundreds of thousands of veterans, those actively serving in the armed forces, and those who were looking to enlist. Simultaneously, we were seeing more and more states that were allowing for same-sex marriage. Political progress and military policy changes were feeding our hope for a greater form of acceptance, the right to be recognized as a group legally allowed to marry. Then, in 2015, under the leadership of former President Barack Obama, it happened. Same-sex couples were legally granted the right to marry. We watched with tears in our eyes as couples who'd been together for decades married one another on national television. The needle had moved, and change was once again on our side. Along with same-sex marriage was the fight for same-sex adoption. It took some time, but we've also seen sweeping acceptance of this change. Fast forward to 2023, 25 years after the murder of Matthew Shepard. And we're now in a time where it's approximated that 1 in 5 of our youngest generation will identify somewhere along the LGBTQIA+ spectrum. We're seeing major corporations and agencies at all levels of government establish policies around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're seeing an aggressive effort on a large scale to have diverse representation on boards and leadership positions. We're seeing people be unafraid to take up space and push for greater levels of cultural competence and a zero tolerance for those who choose to be stuck in arcane practices. My purpose, at 39 years old, is no longer tied to a specific goal or outcome. It is simply to lead with compassion and integrity, to inspire others to be courageous agents of change. It is through progressive change, political and social, that we continue to find hope. Hope as a people, hope as a community, hope is a way of moving through life. It is the hope of changing something for the better, or maybe it's just the hope of knowing that change is coming that allows us to step into the next day. Thank you.